Metcalf. Great to be here with you this morning. Look forward to getting to know a little bit more about you. You got a very interesting background, and look forward to sharing with our audience. Yeah, to start off, just tell us where you're from, where you grew up, and a little bit about the early days.
First, Chris, thanks for having me on here. Let's see. I grew up in Texas. Kind of moved around a lot as a kid. Played a lot of sports. Actually, kind of found golf. I think my great grandpa, he's a farmer out in West Texas, and we were out there to visit. And in his barn, he had like a old set of golf clubs laying in there, and it was, I don't know if it was like the first set of golf clubs ever made, but it was pretty close to it. And I was like, "Hey, Papa, what's up with these?" And he's like, "Oh, well, yeah, you can use them. Go in the field, just hit some balls, pick them up, whatever." And when we went to leave, he came and like put them in the car, and it's like, "Hey, just take these with you." So, kind of fell in love with golf. I was probably 12 or so. There was a field by our house, and I just hit balls. This is pre-internet, so I think I found a book Tiger Woods had written on golf about the grip and all that. So, kind of read that and started teaching myself golf. There ended up being a golf course, near my house, and I'd ride my bike like through the woods to it, carry it over a little creek, walk over there, worked a deal out with them where I could wash the carts and they'd let me play for free. So did that for a while. Then I worked at a nicer golf club. My plan was to go play college golf. And then 9/11 hit and golf didn't really seem that important. So it was like the day after 9/11, September 12th, and today's September 12th. So like 23 years ago today, 22 years ago, something like that. Went into the Navy recruiting office, and I didn't know anything about, really the military. I'd heard a little bit about SEALs. So I went in there. I was like, I don't know. I think I want to be a SEAL. And the recruiter was not the most fit guy. And he's like, "Well, I've worked with SEALs. Blah, blah. I'll tell some story." I'm like, "Well, if this guy's worked with SEALs, like they can't be that good." So I went next door to the Marine Corps office, and when there, I'm like, "All right, these guys look like they could kill me with their pinky." So it's like, "Y'all have anything kind of like SEALs or stuff like that?" They're like, "Oh yeah, we've got Force Recon." I'm like, "All right, that sounds good." So I signed up, like went to MEPS, did the whole thing, and then ended up getting like medically disqualified for a titanium plate in my arm. They said my arm wouldn't hold up during boot camp. So disqualified from not just the Marine Corps, but all branches. So it's like, okay, that's, what I felt called to do, what I think I was supposed to do. And now like there's this huge roadblock. I'm like, "Okay, is there any way around this?" He said, "Well, you can wait like 18 to 24 months and then apply for a waiver. Maybe you get in, maybe you don't." So went to like community college, did that stuff, worked a bunch of jobs. I was helping my buddy's dad run his power washing company, and we cleaned like, it could be like an episode of like Dirty Jobs, right? But it was like you go in and like power wash all the grease traps, like in McDonald's, like above the vent hoods. So one night we worked late till like 4 or 5 in the morning, got up at 8, and we were driving to South Texas to go like power wash an Air Force base, fell asleep at the wheel, hit an 18-wheeler head on, and woke up in a life flight helicopter. And like fortunately, I mean, I've got like a scar on my head and arm and knuckles still, but it's kind of at that point I was like, all right, I got to do something with my life, because like where I'm going right now, like I'm not going anywhere right now. So that was like December of 2002. Like had done kind of all my research, walked into the recruiting office. I was like, all right, I want to do the SEAL challenge. I need this waiver. Here's all the paperwork. And the guy's like, "Okay, yeah, that's great, but what happened to your head?" It's like, I was on a 4-wheeler and a branch hit me in the face. He's like, "Oh, good enough." So boom, got my waiver, and then did the SEAL challenge, left like July of that year, and freaking started the Navy thing, went to boot camp. Then I showed up at Buds, and again, like I played sports, basketball, golf, all that stuff, but I never really ran farther than 1.5 miles, or like swam in the ocean, even like been in the ocean. Maybe we've gone to like, South Padre or something and been to the beach, but that's about it. And next to me, like there's all these Olympic caliber athletes, and I'm just a skinny kid from Texas, and I'm looking around like, oh my gosh, like what did I sign up for? But it's like, okay, I'll just make it through this next thing right in front of me and this next thing right in front of me. And before I know it, like it was over, right? And I'd made it through. So did about 12 and a half years in the SEAL teams, multiple deployments all over the world. But kind of in the back of my mind, I was like, man, I did the stuff I signed up to do, but like, I think I can give this golf thing a run, right? If I just have like enough time and like enough money and a runway, like I think I can make it happen. So, a lot of people like, talk about doing stuff. And I just was like, you know what, I'm just going to do it. So, I think that's where we met. You were one of my sponsors when I was playing golf. So I left the Navy in November of 2015 and went to Latin PGA Tour Q school in January, like 2 months later. Like definitely was not ready, kind of looking back now. So I ended up doing that for 3 years. And it was really like the last 6 months where I was really like, I'd built my skills where I was actually good enough to compete. And kind of had to hit pause on that or stop that the third time I ran out of money. So like I definitely left no stops, had the best coaches, was willing to do anything. I mean, I did public speaking, 5-star Uber driver, did some security contracting, like whatever it took to try to make it happen. But, that third time, it was like, we were so poor that like we were going to the food bank to get food. At that point, I was like, okay, I gotta figure something else out. I can't let like me chasing my dream, like impact my family's future. So then I was like, okay, how do I take what I know about sports, what I've learned in the military, and how do I like just go get a job in like the regular world? So I think I filled out probably 100+ job applications, went on probably 20 job interviews, couldn't get a job, right? And the problem, I didn't know it at the time. The problem was I didn't understand the business language and how to speak in a way where they knew what value I could bring to them. So I was like, okay, that didn't work. My neighbor was a San Antonio police officer. So I applied there and I applied at this business school at the same time. I'm like, all right, just whichever one takes me, like, I'll go. So police department, they're like, yeah, we'll take you. And this is like, I think August, September of 2018. And they're like, yeah, we'll take you, but we don't start our next academy until January. It's like, okay, that's a long time to wait. And the business school said, yeah, we'd love to have you, but we actually just started our course 2 weeks ago, and you're going to have to wait like a year. I was like, okay. And I just like refused to accept that answer. Got the like CEO of the school on the phone and said, look, if you just give me a chance, I'll outwork everyone there and you won't regret it. And he was like, man, nobody's ever asked me that before. He's like, I just want to see if you can do it. So it's like, all right, I'll let you in. So, and I kept my deal, outworked everyone. I mean, like when I went there, I didn't even know how to use Microsoft Excel. So I just was like, okay, I got to figure this out. How do I actually use these buttons? So again, YouTube's your friend. So jumped on there, did that. By the end of it, I had, 25+ job offers, end up going in a startup, learned a ton doing that. We're doing really great. And then COVID came and just like wiped us out. Then jumped on another startup that really wasn't a good fit. And then through all of this, right, part of the reason I got out of the Navy, not only for golf, but to be around and see my kids grow up and coach their sports teams and just do the dad stuff. I started realizing like a lot of these, young athletes, really people in general didn't really have the same mindset that I had when it came to like accomplishing goals, building skills. And then through my, golf days, I've read all the like sports psychology books, like, met and talked to a lot of the sports psychologists, and a lot of the books that I'd read out there were really only applicable if you were already like one of the best athletes in the world. So they all cover stuff like breathing and visualization and thinking happy thoughts. And like those things can definitely help. But if you don't have the skills in the first place, they're completely pointless. right? Like those things can make you 5% better if you're already good. But when people who, they haven't built those skills, they go out and they think, okay, well, this is all I have to do. Like they're just setting themselves up for failure. So it's like, okay, I need to write this book. Like really, I'm writing it for my kids. Like, here's how you are successful, not just in sports, but also in life, and just laid it out in a system. So that's a quick recap of the last 20 years.
Awesome. Great stuff. Well, let's start with golf and that being your passion, and that September 11th happened. So going into September 11th, you thought golf was that was it, and then just that moment just changed everything that day or the next day. And love to just talk a little bit more about just pride for the country, and anything you can share on that.
Yeah. So I was working at Onion Creek Country Club that morning, and I remember we were like pulling the golf carts out for the members coming into play that day, and they said, "Oh, you got to come in here and look at this. You like something's crazy's going on." So went in there and watched the second plane fly into the tower. And I mean, I think I'd been to New York City like once. My dad was up there. He's an FBI agent, so I mean, I've been up there once or twice. But I mean, I didn't know anyone in there, but raised, to love, God, family, country. So like when that happened, it was just like, okay, that, I mean, it really pissed me off, and it was like, okay, it's like somebody needs to pay for this. And, if I'm not willing to go, then like who is? So I don't know, I just like felt like that was something I needed to do. So, that's kind of how it started.
I appreciate your service and just the mindset. Talk about that mindset as becoming a Navy SEAL, as you said, just focus on getting to the next thing or the next day. Why you made it through and so many people don't. Talk about that mindset and the difference, and maybe something for someone that's looking to get involved. Something you could share that would help them.
Yeah, so I think part of it is sometimes not knowing everything that's right in front of you, especially like whenever you're like developing your mindset to like push through obstacles and struggles and all that. Like not knowing everything that's going to happen can sometimes be a blessing, right? So when we were in Hell Week, it's like, okay, like how do you mentally prepare yourself for something like that, right? So you talk to people who've gone through it, and they're like, well, statistically nobody quits after Wednesday, right? If you can make it to Wednesday, like you're not going to quit by that point. So in my mind, I was like, okay, well, I just cut off half the week, because really all I have to do is make it to Wednesday and I'm good. Now, if that's true or not, like, I don't know. But in my mind, it was. So I'm like, okay, it's Sunday. We're about to start this. I just got to make it to Wednesday. And then I was like, okay, my strategy is like, I'm just going to focus on making it to the next meal, right? And you eat, I don't know, 4-6 times a day. So I'm like, I can just make it to that. And there was other guys there. I'm like, oh man, I wonder what we're doing next. And they'd be like, oh, we're doing this. I'm like, how do you know that? They're like, have you not seen they had the Buds Class 2, 3, 4 videos. You ever seen those, Chris? They've got them on YouTube. So I'd never seen the thing before. People are like, what, did you live under a rock or something? I'm like, yeah, no, I haven't seen it. And a lot of guys, because they had seen it, like they knew everything that was coming, and they psyched themselves out. Me, I'm like, okay, I didn't know. I'm just trying to make it to the next meal. And eventually, like, that was too much. You're like, oh, there's a lot going on between this meal and next meal. By like Monday, I was like, okay, I can just make it to that thing like 15 feet in front of me. Right. So it's like setting super small goals. And it doesn't matter how tired you are, you could always make it to that thing that's 15 feet in front of you. Right. So I think that's part of it, being able to just compartmentalize and look at the thing right in front of you that you're doing, do that the best you can. And then, okay, I did that. What's next? Right. And then just stacking that. So that's part of it. The other part, the people that I, showed up with, that I thought, okay, there's no way these guys aren't going to make it through. And, most of them all quit. My theory there is, you know, take athletes, whoever it is, where, people like just stay in their comfort zone their entire life and do everything they can to avoid failing. Right. They never like learn how to push through failure. They never learn how to deal with adversity and keep moving on. And when it hits them in something, some like seemingly impossible situation, they just don't see a way through it. Right. So like for me personally, like other sports I played, I didn't hit my growth spurt till I was like 16, 17. So I was like a foot shorter than every other kid. I was a decent athlete, but because I was so small, I felt like I always had to like work twice as hard to like earn my spot. So it's like that kind of like mentally prepared me, because I'd always had people telling me like I couldn't do things, or you're too small to do that, or whatever. So I think that's part of it. It's understanding like failure is a major part of growth. And was it like Thomas Edison said, I didn't fail 10,000 times, I figured out 10,000 ways that don't work. Right. So if we can shift our view of like what failure is, it's really just feedback on, hey, either what we're doing doesn't work, or we just haven't built the skills to actually be good enough at it yet for it to work. So it's like, use that. What can I learn from it, and move on. So that's kind of my opinion on that.
Love to hear more about, your book, and obviously you wrote it for kids, but it applies to everybody, and just talk a little bit about that.
Yeah. So, got a book, Young Athletes Ultimate Guide to Mental Toughness. So essentially it's that system, right? It's the system I've used to make it through buds, the system I used and like refined, like playing golf. And then, okay, how did I, make it through, like do the business school thing and succeed there, and then applied it to the business world. So again, like when I was going through buds and doing that, I did this system. Like I didn't know I was doing this system, but after going through golf and having that failure, and then having all the like going through the stuff and our business crashing during COVID and coming back and doing something else and working other projects, when I finally sat down and wrote it, I had like 20 years of experience of like pushing through challenges. And I'm like, okay, if I was going to explain this to somebody of how you accomplish big goals, whether it's like sports or life, how would I lay it out? And I made it in a pretty like simple 5-step system, right? And it all starts with like understanding why you want to accomplish whatever it is you're trying to accomplish. Like you have to, if it's going to be hard, like you have to want it for yourself. Like somebody else can't want it for you, right? Because if you're going to go after something big, that means it's going to be difficult. There's going to be setbacks. You're going to fail. And it's how you respond to those. So you got to start with like really actually knowing why you want to do it. So once you have that, you're like, okay, I'm good. Now your next step is like an honest self-assessment. And what I mean by that is you have to like assess your skills where they are today versus where they need to be where you want to go. And then you have to identify that delta of like, okay, I have to be, really good at this to compete in this sport, this business niche, whatever it is. And then so that's it. Okay, I've identified where I need to get good. Your next step is to go find that knowledge, right? That's your first step after that. So it's okay, who is it that I know? Who can I find that's an expert in this? What books can I read from an expert's perspective? And then you download that knowledge, and then you're going to build those skills through deliberate practice, right? And that's deliberate practice is where it says like your quality of practice is more important than the quantity, right? Because if we practice things doing them the wrong way, we're just like throwing in bad habits. Or let's say your goal was like, okay, I want to like get really good at like posting on social media. Just posting a bunch of crap isn't making you better at it, right? The same with like, oh, I want to get good at pitching. Just going and randomly throwing balls is not going to make you better. Like you need to know what you're working on and progress towards that. The third part is like having the right mindset. So when you're in training mode, like you should use, I call it the training mindset. So what that is about is where you take the focus off of winning, right? And the focus is on skill development and improvement. So in this mindset, like you're pushing out of your comfort zone, you're taking risks because you're trying to get growth, right? And you understand that like to build those skills, you're going to fail, but you're going to use that to like refine your skills and get better. Once you've built that skills and you're ready to go execute them on a high level, then you switch to your competition mindset, which is more of like a strategic mindset where you're playing the percentages. So like for golf, you're, you know, an example I use in the book is, you know, I was like 2 years into, you know, playing professionally, mini tours, Q school, all that. And I would hit the ball in the trees and I would try to go, okay, let's see if I hit it, you know, under this tree, over that tree and around this tree, I can still get it on the green and have a chance for birdie. Right. And when I hit it, like it was great. And people were like, oh, that's a great shot. The problem is that shot only works about 5% of the time. Right. So a buddy of mine one day, he's like, hey, have you ever checked out golf statistics? And I was like, no, why? He's like, okay, I'm going to send you an article. And I read it and I'm like, okay, bottom line is I figured out that, man, if you can just get it in the fairway to 100 yards out, like PGA Tour average from there is like 2.2 shots. So I'm like, okay, if I can just hit it in the woods, if I can just hit it back in the fairway, like the worst I'm going to make is bogey. If I can't do that, then I got to get better with my wedges, or I shouldn't even be playing at all. So it's that, you know, what is it in your like sport, business? What's that thing that you know you can execute like 90% of the time? Right. And whenever you go in with like you've built your skills and now you're going to go execute something that you can execute 90% of the time, you just give yourself more chances to win over the long term. Right. Yeah. Like, sure, maybe you can hit that 5% shot and win here and there. But if you want to win like consistently, like you're strategic. So that's why like SEALs are so good. They spend so much time training in that training mindset where you know, your instructors are hard on you, your teammates are hard on you, you're hard on yourself, but you're working to build your skills the best you can. But whenever you go to execute it in real life, you're not taking unnecessary risks. You have a strategy, you have a plan, and you're sticking to that plan. And then the last part of the system is like learning to turn your failure into fuel, right? So that's just accepting the fact that if you're going to push after something hard, there's going to be failure, and just understand that up front. And it's just like reframe your focus on what failure is. And I get some strategies on how you learn from it, how you deal with it, and how failure can actually make you better. If you don't like get in that mindset where like, oh, I failed, it doesn't work, like I'll just quit now. And then I throw out like some real life examples of, you know, people through all walks of life, like, you know, J.K. Rowling and Colonel Sanders. And, you know, there's tons of examples of people who've, you know, overcome massive failure and, you know, use mental toughness essentially to push through and become successful.
It's great. It's great. Where can people find you, find your book?
So my book is on Amazon. You can just search my name, Chad Metcalf, or Young Athletes Ultimate Guide to Mental Toughness. You can find me on all the social media platforms, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube. I mean, just search Chad Metcalf and I should show up.
What last inspiring words do you have, not only for you know, not only for children or adults and athletes, but just for anybody that's going after their goals and dreams? What last words do you have for them?
And just like break it down in small steps and go after that one right in front of you. And, you know, don't get too overwhelmed by, you know, what might happen in the future. Just focus on what you can do today.
Love it. Love it. Thank you so much for your time today, Chad.
Yeah. Thanks, Chris.